Right, greetings. Welcome to the Philosophy Club for our December meeting. It's the 8th of December, and here we are in Little Bettet, the centre of Gaul, ancient Gaul. Hope you like my Vercingetorix moustache that I'm growing. This is to, it's winter, so that one grows a moustache at this time of year. And in case you missed it, on the 7th of November last month, it was Plato's anniversary of his death. That was a very tragic event. But he did live to a ripe old age, and he managed to found the academy. And he managed to, spread deep philosophical teachings, which survive to this day. And one of my unwritten books, which I'm planning as a dictionary, sort of companion to all of Plato's works, giving the who's who, because they're really obscure, who's in the dialogues. And, I've worked it all out and want to just give a summary of why they're important. And also, I'd like to see them performed on the stage. So one of my hopes is if we get the Delphic Games, sometime in Europe here, that's the plan. I'm auditioning for actors who would like to play in the, we'll do one each games or one each time. If Peter Brook were alive, the great film and theatre guy who lived in Paris and was a friend of Gurdjieff, I would get him to produce them. But anyway, actors are needed. Please send me an email. So what's been happening this week? Well, it's been a cold time actually here in France. It's getting wintry, you can probably tell. And I've been helping out with a local library here, which is very exciting. Although I was too ill to help on one of the days. The International Delphic Academy is sending its love and best wishes to Berlin, where there's a gathering in Berlin celebrating 30 years of the rebirth of the Delphic Games. And you'll notice behind me there's the insignia of the Delphic Games, which always took place in those days in Delphi. Now they rove around the planet, and we're setting up trying to get in place certain protocols and so on, so that we can, decide where they should go next. I personally think Paris 2027, because it gives long enough to prepare for it. And I would like France to host the next Delphic Games. Because the way they did the Olympic Games was very arty. There's a flavour in Paris for the arts, for beauty, and for using the arts to triumph above war and insanity. So I think France would do a good job if we can persuade the Minister of Culture to host the Delphic Games in France, in Paris, in 2027. You can say a prayer for that. And also, I think that, France is, today I believe, or yesterday, in Notre Dame, it was reopened in Paris, and lots of heads of state came, even old Trump sneaked in. I'm not quite sure why he got an invite, and Zelensky and people. So that's quite a historic event, the reopening of Notre Dame, which looks absolutely beautiful. And thank you to Macron and the team of architects who've revived it after that tragic fire. And so I think that's what France does best, is beauty. And Notre Dame is a temple of beauty to the gods, to the goddess, to Mary, Notre Dame, to Christ, to the spiritual world. And it's just beautiful to see it reborn from the ashes. So I'd like to see that for all mankind, for all humanity. May that be a symbol for the damaged places of other parts of the world. In Ukraine, sacred places have been bombed, churches have been destroyed. The same in Gaza, utter desecration. Some forces on the planet seem to think that killing, war, destruction is our human duty. I don't agree with that. As a philosopher of peace, I think our duty is to create beauty and peace and justice and truth and love. And that's what Notre Dame stands for. It's what Christianity stands for. It's what Christ stood for, surely, as a teacher. And that's why he was called the Prince of Peace. He was never called the Prince of War. He didn't let his students and disciples, use the path of violence. That's a lesser teacher does that, in my opinion. That's why Christ was honoured by so many people. So, yes, I've been working on all this week and busy with it, really. I've also been elected to the European Committee of the Liberal Democrats here in France, which is a political party that stands for reason and moderation. It's sort of left-centre, totally opposed to Brexit and the Tory party and the selfish, egotistical people that created Brexit. Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, all those people that lied in Parliament. Now you can say, why bother with politics? I have many good friends that don't do politics. They don't vote, they don't belong to parties, they think it's wrong. Well, I'm afraid I can't agree with them. I mean, I organised 30 meetings in the UK Parliament because I do think democracy requires people to attend to it. So here in this area, the village, we have an active sapeur-pompier, which is a group of people that volunteer their own time. In case a fire breaks out, they rush, get on the fire truck, and then go and put the fire out. And they're, the great and the good of the village. Everywhere in France has these volunteers. Our mayor used to be one, for instance. And they're young chaps who've got the strength and the muscle power to do this stuff, and often at the risk of their lives. We had a tragic fire in the village here, and somebody died in it just a few months ago, an old lady. So hats off to these people. But you see, to me, that's why I belong to a political party, because we're like the sapeur-pompier for democracy. The building is on fire of Europe. People are misusing information. They're burning the building down. They're saying, oh, let's all become fascists. Let's leave it to the elites. Let's let Elon Musk take over the country. Elon Musk is trying to pump £80 million into UK politics to buy an election victory for the most extreme right candidate, Mr. Farage and his Reform Party, who've been created with rich money to promote Putin and fascism. They're racist, they're anti-Islamic, they're anti-everything that is normal and decent about human beings and human society. And he's a little trumped-up dictator, Farage. But of course, with billionaires now being able to throw money around, they can make these parties out of nothing. It's how the Nazi Party was created at the end of World War I. It was funded by the rich and powerful behind the scenes who used little Hitler to create a party out of nothing. And I know that as a historian. I studied all this stuff for 40 years. So I don't want that to happen on my watch. And we're trying now to block foreign investment into British politics by malevolent forces that can buy democracy and take over the country, literally. I mean, that's how Trump has won the American election, because Elon Musk gave him, $40 million or more, and bought Twitter so that he could use it as a platform to promote his views. So this is wrong. So I'm just a sapeur-pompier. I think, I could be a member of the Labour Party. I don't mind, really. It's either, for me, the Labour Party, who's the governing party, and I respect a lot of what they're trying to do. I just am a bit uneasy about certain elements of, the infighting that goes on between different factions and so on. So, the Liberal Democrats have a very clear constitution. We're a democratic party. I get a vote like everyone else. We make policy. And I've been a member for a long time, way back in the day when they were in previous incarnations. And when I walked in London on the peace protest 2003 against the Gulf War, the Liberal Democrats marched in force, the MPs, protesting the war. One of our best MPs is Layla Moran, who's a Palestinian from a Christian background whose parents have been suffering inside Gaza. She stood as leader of the party, and I actually voted for her. She didn't win. We got this chap, Ed Davey, who's fine. He's a more mainstream kind of guy. I would have gone with Layla Moran myself. She's a more intellectual. But anyway, I'm not grumbling because the Liberal Democrats, bless them, pulled off 72 seats at the last election, which we stole largely from the Tories because they appealed to kind of normal kind of British people that listen to the Archers and, have a sense of decency and fair play and truth about them, which is what I was brought up with, which the Tory party have completely jettisoned. They've become a party of diabolic, deceit. And my rant last week about the John Smythe and his so-called brand of evangelical stuff is just typical of how good things can be taken over and subverted by dark forces. I noted also this week that John Smythe's, which led to the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, gave a farewell speech in the House of Lords, in which he didn't once apologise. It's the most incredible display of hubris, arrogance, intellectual, deceit. He didn't say, look, I'm sorry, I got this wrong, I'm resigning because it was shocking, I should have exposed this years ago. He acted like a sort of pantomime character saying, well, okay, it's a bit corrupt, but hey, so is everyone else. He is. I know people that should resign too, but I'm the guy having to take the fallout here. And so, okay, I'll fall on my sword, but actually, hey, come on, everyone's corrupt here. We know that. I mean, what a shocking thing to say. What a shocking and disgraceful carry on. I mean, the guy shows no morality, and some of his fellow bishops have pointed this out. He's now losing his seat in the Lords, thank God. I'm also working hard on the 99 Names of Peace book this week. 5 hours a day. It's going to be published by Christmas Day. And I've been covering incredible languages, unbelievably sophisticated approaches to peace, and all the projects that go with it. Rereading it is just mind-blowing. I can't wait for the volumes to be on my desk here, which will happen around Christmas. So that's something else. And one thing that's absolutely clear is peace comes from humility. It's why Christ kept emphasizing humility. It's why the greatest teachers always do. Buddha always emphasized humility. Like, I don't know if this is absolutely true. You try it yourself. See if it works for you. That's a humble teacher. Not do this or you'll go to hell and you'll be burned forever in hellfire. Nonsense. So the greatest teachers are the most humble. And language reflects that. The words for peace come when one surrenders ego, when you transcend your, acquisitive nature, and you surrender to spirit and allow spirit to direct your life and your affairs. Anyway, that's just a little sneak preview of what the book is about, the 99 Names of Peace. The other thing I did this week, which was very exciting, is the village had a town hall meeting type of thing, discussing the war in the Middle East, particularly Lebanon, Israel, Gaza. And about 30 or so of us turned out in the village hall. There was a Lebanese Christian guy who lives here in the village now, who sort of led off a discussion. And it was a very interesting discussion. Different people putting their views forward, the mayor, other colleagues. And it sort of got a bit bogged down in causes and who's to blame and all that. So I made the question at the end, shouldn't we be discussing solutions? And, we got onto that, and I mentioned maybe education is the solution, which I do strongly believe. But anyway, there'll be a follow-up meeting, I hope, and maybe I can have some input into that as well. So it's an example of France's democracy in action. I can't imagine that happening in Britain, where the local council would probably have a rule like you can't talk about politics in the local buildings and stuff. But anyway, so vive la France, thank God for that. Right, I'm going to stop there. That's a little glimpse of what I've been up to for Peace this week. I've got, other events coming up, but I'll report on those next week. I've got another Workaway coming, Australian friend, and we're going to be working on my commentary on the Gospels, which is appropriate in the run-up to Christmas. I did several years' work intensely on detailed commentaries on the 6 Gospels, which is Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but also Mary Magdalene and St. Thomas. And I've included detailed study of the text using Greek and Aramaic and Latin, and then a sort of philosophical commentary. I first of all situate it historically. When was this written? Who by? What do we know about it? And I suspend judgment, about ultimately. And then I do a sort of philosophical commentary on the text, which I can't wait to see as a book. So yeah, soon it'll be published as a book, and I've been waiting for this for years. But now the technology has caught up, it's good enough. So that's exciting. And then my colleague has told me about a new platform, DeepL, that can translate whole English textbooks into French, say, or German. So I now can put some of my work into French, which will be amazing. Because I've had lots of people come here to the museum saying, I want this in French, so now I can do it. And I'm going to put Sophia-Phobia into French, the first one, which is a small book, but deep and important. And I think French intellectuals will like this book, because it explains a lot about what's going on in the world. Our resistance to wisdom, our resistance to knowledge, and our addiction to trivia and all the rest of it. It's like a phobia we have, a phobia about wisdom. So that will go into French, I think, the first one. Okay, I think I'll stop there. Any comments or observations?
I didn't hear you evoking the progress of war in Middle East very recently in Syria. And I look forward to get the gods involved in that matter to know what happened. It looks like it's getting crazy very rapidly, and I'm surprised of that. Maybe next days, next weeks, we will know a little more about what really happened, but I found it very surprising.
Yeah, thanks for drawing that subject in. Yes, obviously it's been on my mind as well as others. And firstly, about Lebanon and Israel, it's good that they've signed a ceasefire. I hope that holds, and that we can go back to normal, north of Israel, and get some amity restored between Hezbollah and the regular Lebanese army and the people of northern Israel. And I'll hopefully be talking to my new Lebanese friend about this. Maybe he'll join us next week. Syria is an interesting and complex case, and I have a particular personal interest because the tarot cards here that we use for the gods, the artwork was done by a Syrian artist, and each week I use these. And this is an amazing woman from Homs who came here a few years ago, and she meticulously hand painted to my design the images of these gods. So here's Pihar, we had him last week, the great Tibetan Bon deity who's flying above the temple. She's such a genius, and she told me personally about what it was like living in Syria when the war started between Assad and the opposition. And Homs was in the battlegrounds. And I believe I'm right in saying this week it's fallen back to the opposition. Now, I believe she'll be delighted about this. She lives now as a refugee in Germany, although she will be like me. She is from a Christian background, Christian Syrian Orthodox, which is a significant minority of people in Syria, she told me some very tragic stories about what it was like, because I suppose I'd always had a sort of feeling that, well, we don't like Assad, but at least he's not letting ISIS run the country and letting the extremist Muslims in. So there was a certain feeling that he was better than that. You know, we all remember the images of captured Jordanian pilots being put in cages and burned alive by ISIS types. And his form of Islam is obviously more moderate than that. But what my friend told me is that really he is also a pretty nasty piece of work, and he had been misusing his power as head of state to do also atrocities. And she was caught in the middle. As a Christian, she wasn't supporting the Islamic resistance forces who were attacking Assad, but she certainly also wasn't supporting Assad. She was just trying to make a life as a professional expert in tourism, and she did a master's degree. She was a very clever young woman. But eventually it reached a point where she had to flee, and she told me the following story about Syria. So one of her closest mentors in Homs was a Jesuit priest who I believe was Belgian, or actually Dutch, who had lived there for years, spoke fluent Arabic, understood the culture, loved the Muslims and the Christians, was just a really intellectual luminary. And he used to organise walking trips in the summer for the local kids, sort of teenagers, would all come with him into the mountains, and they'd spend a couple of weeks with tents and explore the backwaters of Syria's amazing countryside. She would often go on those tours, and of course they'd discuss theology and spirituality on the walks. I mean, it wasn't, and people went who were Christian, who were Muslim, who were nothing in particular, humanists, and she just loved those. That was part of her formation as a child growing up. And she really revered this guy. He became a close friend. He used to run like a philosophy club in Homs where they would meet, once a month, and she would always go. And anyway, she told me the following story. When the war got really terrible and it was time to go, because it was literally happening, in the middle of Homs, the democratic resistance forces, the Islamic forces, were attacking Assad's forces, who were not surrendering, and they were fighting like mad, blowing things up. And the Jesuit refused to leave town. He said, no, these are my people. I'm going to stay and try and make peace here. I've got friends on all sides. I'm not taking sides here. I'm neutral. This is the House of Christ. This is the Jesuit centre of Homs. Anyway, the story is that he stayed there right up until, there was hardly anyone else left in the city. It was all bombed out ruins. And then somebody knocked on his front door one day. He answered the door, he didn't know who it was. And it was just someone with a gun, and they pulled out a gun and shot him in his head between his eyes and killed him instantly. He died. Now, to this day, they never discovered who that was. Was that an Assad assassin sent by the government? Was it a democratic Islamic resistance fighter sent? Nobody knows. He was just a victim of that senseless, mad civil war that's been raging. And I personally think he should be nominated as a saint in the church, because he was a martyr, effectively, for his faith, which is about peace. And he was gunned down in cold blood like that. Anyway, my friend told me the story, and I was very moved. And I just hope the fighting can stop. If this democratic resistance force has taken control of Homs, let it rule moderately. Let it have genuine democracy. Let it not make the mistake of imposing a sort of Islamist fanaticism. This was done in Raqqa. And the other thing I want to say is I watched an amazing film in French this week called 9 Days in Raqqa, which was made by a French filmmaker, a woman documentary person. She went to Raqqa, which, if you recall, was a town that was captured by ISIL, or Daesh, as they call it, and ruled as the headquarters of the Daesh Caliphate. this pseudo caliphate they created with their black flags, and they imposed an extremely draconian form of Islam. Women all had to be burqa'd up. They also did mass executions in the town square if you said the wrong thing about Islam or the Prophet or anything. You know, you fell out of what they regarded as proper Islam, you would be killed. And it was public execution, head chopped off, and then stuck on a pole in the town square. And it could be for small stuff. So, anyway, a few years ago there was the Kurdish forces, with help from America actually. America under Trump sent in some forces to reclaim Raqqa from these madmen, and succeeded. And the documentary starts with that, the victory. And the film is mainly about an amazing woman called Layla Mustafa, who was a Kurdish fighter, because the Kurdish used women fighters, who helped the victory. And then she stayed and became a politician and ended up as the mayor of Raqqa. And the film follows 9 days of her life, soon after the battle, as she's trying to restore things like power, water, electricity, education, get the markets reopened, because people were living in bombed out, utterly destroyed centre of Raqqa. She was a very moderate woman, amazing woman, a Muslim, what I would regard as a true Muslim, extraordinary woman. And I wrote her a letter. I was so moved, I wrote her a letter thanking her for her work from France, saying, is there anything we can do? And I looked up her email address, only to discover that she died, last year. She had an operation that went wrong. But I'm going to send it anyway to the council. It was a sort of tribute to her. Now, I want people like that to come forward in the new Syria, because that's a Syrian city in the northeast of Syria, Raqqa, and it's on the Euphrates River. I hope those kind of people will take over places like Homs. They're genuine Syrian Democrats who just want a good society. They want Christians and Muslims and humanists to all live together in peace. They don't want fanaticism. They certainly don't want Daesh types. So that's my response, is to say, well, watch this carefully, And what I don't want is, I don't want for any outside forces to put extremists into power. So I don't want America or Britain or Israel to... What we've done in the past is we promoted extremist forces to then give Islam a bad name, so then we can go and attack them and bomb them. I mean, it's a perverse kind of logic. We've just got to hands off this. Let the Syrian people sort this out. They're good, intelligent, wise people. Let's give them aid, culture. Let's give them educational support. Let's give them funding to rebuild their shattered community, and not sponsor or support or help any fanatical factors. So, and I certainly don't think Israel should be, staring the hornet's nest and trying to benefit from this in some way that can create their own grandiose, Greater Israel type project from chaos. No, what we want is stability and peace to be restored in Syria. And this poor chap, this Assad, I don't know. I think he was a doctor in London. I think his escape plan is to go back to London. I think the sooner he gets on that plane, goes back and just works as a doctor, just, renounce politics, and just leave it. You've made a bit of a mess of Syria, I'm afraid. And let the people now take over. So that would be my response to this situation.
Thank you very much.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let's just pray for them, because it must be very disturbing. Okay, right. Well, let's move on and look at our periodic table, shall we? I've got some exciting news about the periodic table. My essay or paper about this has been accepted by this journal, Teaching Theology and Religions, and it'll be published, hopefully in the new year, which is an academic journal for specialist teachers of religions and theology. And I believe, I hope it'll be of great interest to them, because I devised it as a teacher, and I want other teachers to know about it. and professors of education of religions and philosophies. Because if this table had been in, say, Bristol University, when as a young man I went to study philosophy, it would have all made so much more sense. The way philosophy is taught really at the moment in academia is not very, they never give you the comprehensive overview. You're taught by some specialist who's got a thing about Sartre or loves Hume, and they just promote their own little thing. They never, give you the overview, which is what I've done. So I want this in every philosophy department around the world, and every school, lycée, secondary school, where they teach philosophy and, religions. Okay, have you chosen one?
Yes.
You've got one, okay.
Yes, 164 is philosophy, anthropology, archaeology.
Oh, okay, great. Right, that's a good one. Gosh. Yeah.
About this map.
Yes.
I'm only a new student, but maybe about 1 year.
Sure. You've encountered it. Yeah.
I start to be familiar with your periodic table of religion, but still, the philosophy is so huge. You have 3, 6, 9, about 25 different philosophical topics as religion. So my question is why? As an introduction, maybe.
Sure. No, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so I devised the table as a teacher, full-time teacher, working in secondary school with a very bright sixth form group who all wanted to study, in depth. And they were coming to my lessons saying, I don't believe in God, the whole subject's ridiculous, there's nothing to learn here. I don't have any faith, so why should I be forced to come here and study this thing? It's ridiculous. I want to be an engineer, I want to be a physicist, I want to be a IT guy or whatever, right? Because
a bankster?
No, they were good people, they didn't say that. But some of them would, But so I thought about it, and I thought, because I was friendly with the science department, faculty, the head of physics, I gave some talks, I was head of the philosophy department, called the Philosophy and Religious Studies department. And, I met my same students, but now they're studying physics, and they loved it, because they had on their wall a periodic table with the elements, and they felt assured, they knew where they were. They're studying real things, matter, material, elements, right, which have certain qualities and you can study them. And it was intellectually exciting for them, because if you heat iron at a certain thing, when does it, bubble up? And, the properties of the chemical elements have been studied for 200 years and we know quite a lot about them. So physics is a real thing, and these young kids were excited by it, because then you can apply it in medicine, you can apply it in energy production, all kinds of stuff, nuclear physics. So anyway, I thought about this and I thought, okay, so there's the intellectual excitement of learning this stuff is challenging. There's the usefulness of it, because you can apply the knowledge. And then you can go on and study at university, you can get a career out of this, so there's a motivation there. Whereas, so the first point I explain to these students is, religion and philosophy are incredibly important subjects, because they're like dealing with the causal level of existence. And we used to call the natural sciences, we called them natural philosophy. When people in medieval Europe and Oxford and Paris started developing the sciences, they called it natural philosophy, up until the 17th century still.